Hey guys, welcome to A Little Help for Our Friends, the podcast for people with loved ones struggling with mental health. Hey little helpers, today we're going to talk about my dissertation, but I promise I will not drag you through a boring description of my methods and results. We're just going to be focusing on the topic itself, which for me was something called mentalization, and I was looking specifically in borderline personality disorder. But to not confuse you further, I'll say that mentalization is kind of like when we think about what is in another person's mind or what's in our own mind. So I'm looking at Kibby here. If I'm mentalizing, I'm kind of like trying to figure out what it is that she's thinking or feeling, or maybe what she believes about herself or the world. And I'm using clues like conversations we've had in the past, or the facial expressions she's making right now, or how I feel in her company, which is just gross and off-putting and frightening.
Excuse me.
No, which is lovely and light and fulfilled. And I'm making inferences about like who she is because of that. But I could also be doing the same thing with myself. Like, what am I thinking? Ooh, based on these physical sensations I'm having, what emotion could this be? What might I think about a future situation? If you told me to go jump off a rocky cliff into the azure waters below, how might I feel about that when the time comes? So it's this really, really broad term. And there are a couple terms that we use more frequently, like empathy, and that gets at a lot of mentalization. Um, but I think mostly we'll be using the term mentalizing now. Is that fair? I can add a lot more to that definition, but I don't want to bore people.
Yeah, I think it's all of these different the big category is social cognition, right? It's like what do we think? What are our thoughts doing in social situations? And mentalization is specifically like my thought process around what you're thinking or what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. So yeah,
Cool. Well, I'm going to kick it over to
perspective
you.
taking is another piece, but yeah, you can
Yeah,
get into it.
perspective taking, empathy, like all of these words we use to describe just figuring out how another person thinks and feels. That's mentalizing. What can Cooler Mind help us or tell us about mentalizing?
Well, we got some really exciting stuff coming up. I'm not officially supposed to be announcing it yet, but our group
Cool.
is starting. Yeah. Our community group is starting in July, so it opens up at July 14th. I'll be spreading the word until then. So basically, it's Cool Mind is our platform and community for learning all the skills that we talk about here about how to navigate the mental illness, personality disorders, or addiction of the people in our lives. Um, Boundary setting, how to recognize when a relationship is getting abusive and how to set those boundaries and how to take care of yourself and how to support your loved ones when they're struggling. Because I know there's so many pieces to supporting a loved one with mental illness in your life. So, um, based on what people were saying, I mean, we were doing one-on-one coaching, but we're also now launching a group so that more people can join because we're running out of spaces. So, if you're interested and want to learn more, go to the link in the show notes or go to Kulamind, KULAMIND.com. There actually is a place where you could put your name on the wait list for the group. So if you're interested, just check out the website, ask me, reach out. You could book a free call and we could talk about it.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
mean,
really, really excited for this topic because you know that we love this topic so much. It has everything empathy and shame and personality disorder. And how does one get so messed up when it comes to reading someone else's emotions? It's like such a interesting topic for me.
yeah, I mean, it's hyper relevant to Cool Mind because you're working with like how to help people be more interpersonally effective and like care for themselves and others. Especially when they have like dysregulated loved ones, and we really, really need mentalization to be able to do those things.
Yeah,
Um,
it's one of those things where I mean, you feel it. When you have a loved one who cannot mentalize, who just doesn't have empathy, who doesn't take your perspective, it's maddening, right? It's like this feeling that you don't matter or you're just like an observer watching this person in their own head. and it doesn't feel like a back and forth. So mentalization or all these skills that we talk about are just so subtle but so important.
Yeah. Well, you did your dissertation on empathy. I did mine on mentalization. Actually, when I first applied to the lab and interviewed with Zach, I was talking about my interests. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not really that interested in that stuff, but Kimmy is." Like, oh, okay. Is that, I don't know the good or bad. So,
He
yeah.
is interested in that stuff, or why would he be taking us? But yeah, what tell me, I mean, if you can summarize your dissertation question, like what you studied in a question, and how did you get interested in this, actually? I don't even know.
Okay, how would I sum it up in a sentence? I was basically wondering if people with borderline personality disorder are better at mentalizing about other people that are unrelated to them than they are when they are themselves in an interaction. So I'm basically saying, like, if I were to mentalize about you and Caitlin hanging out and thinking about how you two might have felt in each other's company and what kinds of things you might have talked about and thought about, I might be better if I have BPD. I'd be better at doing that than I would be if I were mentalizing about us hanging out, you and me hanging out, and like wondering what kinds of things you're thinking about me and
Mm,
wondering what kinds of things you might believe about me and how you might feel.
mm.
And the reason for that is because I previously studied for my thesis. I studied the role of shame in borderline personality disorder, and the existing research suggests that shame is super duper important in BPD, and that it's not just the that they feel shame frequently, but that the core schemas, the kind of core beliefs they have about themselves, others, and the world are really impacted by shame. So I don't think it would come as a surprise to anybody with BPD, but a lot of core schemas around worthlessness, defectiveness, I am broken, there's something wrong with me, I am abandonable, people don't love me, I'm defective. And if you think that you are defective and worthless, then if you are in interaction with somebody else, wouldn't you expect to see that that would color how they feel about you?
And how they understand how that other person's thinking, feeling in your presence.
Yeah. Like if I think I'm a
Yeah.
piece of shit, then I probably think you think I'm a piece of shit.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I think you think Caitlin's a piece of shit because I don't think Caitlin is defective or worthless, right? So that was kind of my hypothesis. And spoiler alert, it was null, but I still think it's correct. It was just the way I measured it.
How
Um,
did you get interested in that? Like, uh, what about either borderline personality disorder or mentalization or shame caught your attention? What do you think is so interesting about it?
I think I have the conscious reasons and then the subconscious reasons. I think
Ooh,
the
the me search
conscious,
reasons. Research is me search.
yeah. I think the conscious reasons were I dated a, a terrible person, but he was really exciting and interesting, and I thought that he was histrionic person. I thought that he had histrionic PD. So I was like, PDs. And then I decided, no, he's a narcissist. So I was still like, PDs. But nobody studies those two disorders. So I found a BPD lab. Um, and that was a population that was much softer in a way than narcissism, more vulnerable, more lovable, more, um, I don't know, it pulled me in a way. But I like how activated, I like activated people a lot of the time. Um, And so I just, there was something about like a good personality disorder that was just like interesting, activated, dynamic, chaotic, right? Like it's just there's a lot to wrangle with. And um, I've also loved interpersonal relationships. I'm really interested in how people get along and how they fall in love and how they protect themselves and defend themselves from relationships, but also how they, fall into them and surrender to them. So how we understand what's in another person's mind is a really crucial skill for that. Um, and shame is just the worst. I mean, no one likes to feel that one. That's the point of shame. And it's an interpersonal emotion. So all of these things just kind of fit together. And of course, like, yeah, I can see where shame influences my behavior and my reading of how other people see me. Um, the subconscious pathways, I think that I have a particular person in my life with BPD who I think set me up to welcome in more people in my life with BPD. And I wound
Mm.
up with a lot of people in my life who have BPD. And their ways of relating are just fascinating.
Yeah, makes sense. How do you think shame affects the way you mentalize?
I mean, I think that, shame can be a little bit interesting to peel apart when we're talking about schemas because we all know what like the state shame is like shame in the moment. When we talk about beliefs that we have about ourselves, we're talking about insecurities. It's like, is that shame?
Mm.
If I have an insecurity, right? Like if I think that I'm not good at something, does that mean I think I'm defective? Um, Probably we wouldn't say that unless it feels like I myself am defective. But what if it's just like I myself am defective at um, being a leader? Would we say that that is a shameful self schema if I think that there's something about my personality that doesn't bode well towards something else? Is that truly shame or is that something else? That's sort of a
Yeah.
question. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that if we're talking about shame, the emotion that comes up when we feel like we are something or have a quality that would get rejected from the group, right? Or
Mhm.
get ostracized or kicked out of the social group, then when you have these schemas, or another word for core beliefs, when you have these beliefs about yourself that are so ingrained, that are about, I am broken, I'm a bad leader, I have this quality, I believe I have this quality. But then when that belief is attached to, and then people won't like me, people
Right.
will judge me, people will reject me, right? Like, I believe that I am not a prima ballerina. Like I truly believe that. I don't think I ever will. I don't even know that's core belief, but like, but I don't
That's something
feel
you for sure
like
believe about yourself. Yeah.
I definitely believe I'm not a prima ballerina, but I don't have any shame around it because there's no one, unless like for some weird reason someone forces me to get on the stage and try a couple of standing on my
Right.
toes, that it doesn't affect my life. It doesn't lead to any feelings that I have been cut out or rejected by the people I care about, right?
Yeah.
But other qualities, yes, right? Like we talked about my anger or my like different mechanisms I have more shame around those core beliefs because it's like, oh, I have this quality, therefore I'm bad and people will reject me.
Yeah.
That's what I assume, right?
Yeah. I'm
Like
trying to
what
think.
does that quality lead to? And does
Right.
it lead to rejection?
I mean, I think if you have like a pervasive shame schema, then we're talking something that's closer to self-loathing, where you just
Mhm.
really believe that you yourself are just not lovable. I wouldn't say that I suffer from that. I would say that I have insecurities, and when those insecurities are spotlighted, then I feel shame. So, for instance, I was talking to my supervisor today, and she was like, she gave me some really nice compliments. She said, she's like, you're better at CPT than almost any intern I've ever seen, and I think your clinical insights are excellent. I've seen some phenomenal sessions. This was the lead into her compliment sandwich. Um, the anti compliment was, you don't bring enough structure to sessions, and something's keeping you from doing that. And that's true. Like, that's definitely true. I've gotten that feedback before. And she's like, what do you think that is? And I was like, I think that when I'm in session, I find it really difficult to take command sometimes. I feel like if a person doesn't take the homework seriously, then that might mean they don't take me seriously and they don't think I'm helping them. And then I get insecure about like, you know, leading them and being like, no, you've got to do these. Right. So that would be an example of like my insecurity kind of bringing up shame in myself and changing how I believe my patients are mentalizing about me, right? Where I'm like, or that changes how I mentalize about my patients, where I kind of like, in, I mean, maybe I'm correct, but we'll say incorrectly mind read that they don't take me seriously and that I think they think I'm useless. So we see that like our insecurities often drive the way that we think other people experience us.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Interesting.
we've gotten in tussles, right? Where like you'll like I was like late to a recording session and then you said something to me that made me upset, but part of why it made me upset was because like I feel insecure about being a responsible and competent adult. So, right? So
Hmm.
then like that's my portion of the thing. You know, it's like how does my shame then it comes up and it's like Kibby thinks that I'm all the time an irresponsible child because that's who I am. That, you know, like it overtakes and it changes what we think. Shame
Hmm.
often prevents us from saying, "Well, she was annoyed with me in that moment. We'll be fine in 5 minutes." Right? It instead it creates this like existential crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I know that shame for you, like we've talked about this, where shame is one of the hot emotions. For a lot of people, but you've
Yeah.
expressed that when you feel shame and you have this weird shame experience where like you've been internet trolled before, being on the back, there's like this whole level of like online bullying that you've experienced that like adds to the shame piece where when you feel shame, I've seen you the most shut down. Like different
Mhm.
emotions, you're able to like kind of stay in the moment, but shame is one where you really go inward. And yeah, I mean, it's- shame and empathy is really just an interesting topic because if you feel shame in that moment, I can like it makes total sense that that's a blocker of being able to empathize and attune to someone else's emotions because you're like in a time where you probably should, right? It's like in that moment you think that person hates me, that person's going to reject me. Um, and then you have all these defenses around it, whether it's like an anger of like, fine, I don't need that person. They're terrible anyway. I don't need them. Cut them out. I'll reject you before you reject me. Or
Right.
um, you're just shame can like pull you inward, so all you're doing is thinking about yourself, which means that you're not there with that other person, right? So it really is like it's a it's a it's an emotion that's supposed to keep you in the group, right? Like keep you with the caveman pack. But when it gets so dysregulated and high, it it makes you actually sometimes act in ways that lead to rejection. Right? We've
Mhm.
talked about this, where it's like, when people like feel so ashamed that they tend to lie, right? Or they tend to get angry and mean to the other person, which then does lead to the rejection, right? So it's just such an interesting navigating the kind of the interpersonal effects are just really interesting.
Well, I mean,
You're smiling. Go for it.
well, it's just always like these emotions are these like evolutionary tools that were given to us, these sort of, primitive little systems, but they go so haywire so quickly. I mean, yeah, shame is supposed to keep us in a group. It's supposed to tell us, shut the fuck up and go hide and stop doing what you're doing. Like, let people forget about you for a while and then you can kind of creep out and rejoin society.
Mm,
But all it has to do is be turned up a little too loud and it turns into anger and aggression and all sorts of behaviors that are likely to get you rejected. And that's what people with BPD find. They're getting rejected all the time. Their shame is so high. It's not, you can't hold it. And I can talk about why that is.
yeah, I want to hear that. I'm just having a thought about how much this whole thing of shame and lack of empathy might be such a driver of what's going on globally and socially, right? I mean, it's just like
Mhm.
if you think about there's so much of like I'm forgotten. Like my group is forgotten by the government. My group is or I'm not seen
Mhm.
publicly. I'm not represented. Whether you're from, like a conservative middle of the country or from a different, minority group, right? Like we're all angry that we feel so rejected and dismissed that it's just shutting off all of our empathy towards anyone else who's different than us. So I was just thinking about how like relevant this topic actually is right now.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, this is what the dumbest thing the Democrats did was they shamed the majority class. The
Yeah.
majority and the most powerful ones. Like, what were you thinking? Don't kick out men. So, anyways, but yeah, I mean, we see male loneliness epidemic and a crisis of purpose and an opium addiction. It's like opiates addiction. that is probably embedded in like, who am I? Is there any point to me? Nobody cares about me. No one's sticking up for me. Like, fuck me then. So fuck you too.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Lack of shutdown of empathy all around. So what did you, okay, wait. First, I want to hear how you actually like studied this because you did actually like a really good job. You don't have to go deep into the hairy methods that you don't want to, but you did a really cool study.
Well, thank you. So when you do research, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So, I went and looked at mentalization measures that have already been used a lot. And I found one that had been used a lot in BPD research, and then one that had been used in psychosis research that I used as well. So basically, what I was saying is all the like existing measures were asking people to mentalize about other unrelated people. And I'm not the only person who has proposed turning this around and making it what we call self-referential. So I am now mentalizing about Kibbe and me. That's self-referential. It references the self versus other referential, meaning I'm talking about Kibbe and Caitlin. So I took an existing measure and then copied it but changed it into self-referential. So it was like Tom and Vicky. Now it's Tom and you. Ooh, like very simple switch.
What were the tasks? What did they ask people to do?
Um, the social faux pas task is like Helen is at her friend Sarah's house. She spills coffee on her dress and says, "Oops, I was going to wear this to your party on Saturday." But it was a surprise party. Did Helen say something she shouldn't have or something that was awkward? And then it's like, why do you think Helen said it? What do you think she was feeling when she's. It's like that kind of, so they ask you about like a social faux pas, and then like you have to mentalize about why this may have happened and like, was it intentional, right? And the hinting task is the one from psychosis research. They had made a self-referential one, so that's why I took it, and then I made an other referential one that could be used for online purposes. Blah, blah, blah. But it's the same concept. It's a vignette, and one character gives the other one a hint. Like, Tom goes over to Jack's house to study. When he gets there, he says, "Brr, it's cold outside. What could he mean by this?" And the hint is basically supposed to be like, "I'd like to warm up before we start studying." Or like, "Can you hand me that
I was
blanket?"
like, sounds pretty
Yeah,
clear to
when
me. I don't know what
I
he's
know
hinting at.
when I looked at the hinting task, I was like, I might get results suggesting that I undermentalize because I tend to take people at their word. Once you get the gist of the task, you can keep going with it. But I mean, this is the thing, right? These like measures aren't amazing, and yet it's what the research relies on. And that's what you find in research a lot. This is why when people say, like, I believe science, I'm like, that's fantastic. But you have to understand that science itself, like my study is going to say there's no difference between other and self-referential because I got the null hypothesis. But that doesn't mean it's true. It means that the measures I used that the rest of the literature has been using for so long might have some flaws in them and they might not like pick up things.
Right.
So that's an aside.
Right. It's really tough to capture everything, all your social skills by like reading that description online and then for you to
Exactly.
answer the question of like, what could Tom be thinking? But were there right answers or was it just about seeing how you answered? Like how does
No, there's
one
right answer.
do well on those tests? There's a right
It's
answer.
multiple
Okay.
choice.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that's whatever. But we found that shame was important and that shame explains some group differences. We found that people with BPD are worse at mentalizing overall, even worse than people with just like general high psychopathology. So people who are depressed or anxious, or have some other disorder. We found that like if you have BPD, you've got even greater deficits. And that state shame, so the shame you feel in the moment, can collapse those group differences. So suddenly it's shame that explains things, not diagnosis.
Hmm. So what do you make of those findings? Like
Um,
what do they mean?
I think that we need different paradigms and ways of measuring the question, but it means that the way you feel in the moment, if you're super ashamed, right? Like, of course that's going to give you deficits. It's going to do this thing we were just talking about. I think that there are reasons I would like to do, well, I would like somebody else to do analyses that show whether that like shame process is specific to BPD, like whether They are more likely, whether it's more likely that their deficits are coming from shame versus other groups. And it would make sense because here I'll go into the development model if that's okay, the developmental model.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, the idea is the way mentalization develops is when you're a little wee baby, you come out of the womb and you have some tools. And those tools are your emotions and the way you express them. And you have no idea who you are yet because you're a baby. Your brain is mush, and you don't have a prefrontal cortex that's very online at this point, and you don't have a lot of reflective capacity. So you're basically this little moldable, squishy little screaming thing. And your environment, I mean, you have lots of instincts and embedded data and everything, but your environment is going to do a lot to shape that and develop it. And if that's the case, your early tools are pretty important. And they're pretty important in helping you make sense of who you are and what's going on in this big, scary place you've just, shot out of your mother into. So if you are a baby and as you grow up, you cry, 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 and your mom comes and holds you and says, "Oh, you look so sad. I'm so sorry you're sad. Like, let me rub your back. Let me rub your back. Let's sit here in this." Then you're going to understand that when you cry and make whatever face you were making at your mom, and maybe if you cry in a particular way, that means you're sad. And now you have a word to put to this particular experience. And that when you're sad, you can reliably expect, if this happens over and over again, if your mom keeps comforting you, that that's going to make people want to take care of you and comfort you. And conveniently, that is what sadness is designed to do. So you are getting basically correct, appropriate social feedback for that emotional experience that you're having. And when you do that with all of your other emotions, and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm angry, and then your mom helps you make sense of why you were angry. Oh, it made you angry when you got pushed over at the playground. And now you want to, yell at him. Okay, I get it. Yeah, that would frustrate me too, right? You get all of this feedback that suggests what you're thinking is normal. It makes sense. It makes sense to other people, and it can reliably get the same kind of feedback from other people. And when you can get the same feedback from other people, then you can start to make consistent sense of who you are. If I take ballet lessons and my teachers all consistently tell me, holy shit, you should be a prima ballerina when you grow up, then I start thinking, I'm a ballerina. That's something about me that's true. Everybody else thinks it's true. I have evidence suggesting it's true, so that's something I'm going to identify with. If everyone tells you you're smart, if everyone tells you you're beautiful, etc. Now, of course, you're going to start to get some people who don't say that. I've been consistently told that I have high emotional intelligence and that I should be a therapist. But last week, a Redditor said I have extremely low EQ and they can't even fathom how I could ever be a mental health professional, right? If I didn't have an identity shaped around this, I wouldn't be able to buffer myself against that. I would be and I was confused, right? Because that was a very strong claim. But the problem is now we're taking a different kid who comes out and they scream and they get hit. They're like, oh my God. Okay, so I guess when I'm upset, I get hit. But then another time when they scream, they get cuddled. And so this is weird. Okay, sometimes when I scream, I get hit. Sometimes I get cuddled. Third time when I scream, everybody ignores me. Okay, what is this screaming thing I'm doing? This kid is going to be like, when I scream, no one's helping me understand what's happening. No one's telling me it's because I'm hungry or because I'm cold or because I want a hug. And they're giving me really weird social feedback. I can't predict what happens when I have this emotional experience. So what is this experience? I don't know. I don't know what it is I'm feeling. I don't know why it is I do these things. It's just something in me says scream, and then I scream, and then I'm hit, and sometimes I'm soothed, and sometimes I'm ignored. So I don't know whether I should keep doing this or not. And I'm not getting consistent social feedback. So okay, now this person's saying that I'm good at ballet, but this person says I'm bad at ballet, and I don't have any kind of core place from which I can know exactly who I am and why I feel the things and what I'm feeling, and so who knows if I'm good at ballet? I don't know. I guess I'll just believe whatever somebody says to me in the moment. It's the best thing I've got to hold on to is just whatever you tell me I am or who you tell me I am right at this very moment, because there's no predictive quality to it. It's going to change next moment, so I guess then I'll believe that. And so now you have the person with BPD having this this identity like problem where they're just like, I don't know who I am. And if you don't know who you are, it's really hard to mentalize because you don't know what your own emotions are saying. How are you supposed to know what other people's emotions are saying? And how are you supposed to know how other people feel about you when you're not getting any kind of consistent information? And so you're just this kind of like big ball of confusion. And the other thing is
Yeah.
that sometimes it's a really bad idea to mentalize because if you're a little kid whose mom or dad abuses them and doesn't take any good care of them and is really chaotic, then what are you going to do? Think, yeah, it must mean they don't love me. They don't care about me. Okay, yeah, I guess. Okay. Like that's not a helpful thing to believe necessarily. And so blocking mentalizing can be adaptive.
Yeah. There's also this other layer that the mentalization literature adds on to this, like what you were describing as a nice like biosocial theory of how important it is for caregivers and the people around you to help you make sense of your own emotions, right? And help you regulate. And the piece that the mentalization group, Bateman and Fonagy, talk about is that there, at some point in the kid's development, they get the idea that they're looking at their mom, and their mom has a picture of you in their mind. Like, it's not just, oh, you're sad.
Right.
It's, oh, you're sad. You are sad. And then there's this, we're so good socially that there's an understanding that, oh, I'm a baby, I'm sad, but mama is not sad. Mama
Mm-hmm.
is seeing me. Oh, she's thinking about me. Wait a minute, I'm thinking about mom, right? It's
Right.
it's crazy to also see it happen with my toddler where there is this like this beautiful connection with the baby where you are one, like that kind of level where emotions are shared and we're in it together. And babies, until I think that like 2 or 3, they don't have an idea that you are separate from their mom
Yeah.
until the perspective taking theory of mind part of your brain starts to develop around I think age 3, where they go, oh wait, I have a separate brain and you have a separate brain and I'm sad, but you don't seem to be sad. Actually, I feel like the world is ending right now because I'm upset and probably hungry, but you seem calm. So I'm going to feel safe because I'm going to assume that you also have a perspective on it that I don't have, right? So that's
Yeah.
like such an important part of our social emotions is that we developed and really evolved uniquely to be a bunch of brains together, right? I have a mind and I have my own feelings, and you guys have a whole bunch. And my survival relies on trying to figure out what you guys are doing and thinking and feeling, but also how to communicate what I need to you guys. And then we all coordinate this whole dance together of with minds and feelings, right? We're all one, but we're all kind of separate.
Yeah.
So that autonomy, that separation is something that they think that people with BPD don't have. It's like being stuck like in a toddler, right? Where I watch it in my mom, I watch it in like people who have like severe motion dysregulation. They're like, "Ah, I'm mad and you hate me." And I'd be like, "No, I meant something else. You misinterpreted." They're like, "No, that's impossible because what I think and feel was the whole world." Right. And so it has this narcissistic, self absorbed quality because their emotions are the only thing that matter. But the theory is because they just don't realize that that's not true, that
Mm-hmm.
other people can feel different things than you,
Mm-hmm.
which is so basic. But think about what the world would be like if you felt like your emotion was literally the only thing that existed.
Yeah. I mean, if you get crazy feedback to your emotions, then it's difficult to make sense of what that other person is thinking or feeling, I guess. And so how can you create a mental representation of yourself in their mind? Like for something to make sense, there has to be a through line. There has to be some aspect of consistency. So if you get crazy chaotic stuff, you're not going to have a through line. If you get intensely negative stuff, you will have a through line, but it will be deeply shameful. I am hated. And
Hmm.
I think people with BPD often get one of those two outcomes.
Hmm.
Um, did Jackson learn how to say daddy before mama? Or
Hmm.
daddy, mama? You know,
Yeah.
do you know why that theory? It was what you just talked
Is it
about.
because like because he recognized the babies recognize the dad as separate beings faster than moms?
Mom. Yeah.
I know it sucks because because like there when he was developing autonomy, he was especially like nasty or annoying to me and like really nice to Alex. Like he would be working on something and I'd come in and I would like say hello or say, and he'd be like, "No, go away, mama." And at first I was like, oh, but I learned that it's because that they're learning autonomy, so they need to feel that separateness, and
Mm-hmm.
they like do things to push you away, right? Like this big no phase when they're two, like no, 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 just because you
Yeah.
ask them to brush their teeth or eat something, and even if they're going to, they just want to say no to be like, I'm a different person, and I'm gonna make this decision. I'm gonna eat that, but not because you told me. It's really fun. It's a really fun time.
Fonagy also talked, and this kind of confused me, but he talks about how people with BPD will often need to create an emotional experience in another person that they can see out in the world in order for them to make sense of what's happening inwardly. Have you heard this?
Like what? No, that's cool.
Like if I'm feeling panic, but I can't own that because I don't have a way of making sense of my own emotions, I might call you and be like, "We need to talk," and then hang up.
To make me panic,
Yeah.
to be like, oh, it's real now that someone else feels it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
I don't know if research backs that up, but I was reading the mentalization-based treatment handbook and it was talking about that. So I can also just imagining Jackson being like, "I'm mad, she's me, let's make her mad, and then I can see it out in the real world, and I can play with it and
Yeah,
understand it, and you know what I mean?"
yeah. I mean, it just feels like mentalization and developing mentalization, good empathy skills is really about learning that we have edges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just feel like you're just like a bunch of emotion and we don't have edges, we don't have borders between me and you. Oh my God, that's talk about regulation. I mean, how do you even manage a feeling that doesn't have any boundaries, literally?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
we'll see.
I had a friend who would talk about, she's like, I can't even tell who I am unless somebody's mirroring for me, like unless I'm in front of somebody talking. And that's why she would vent at me so much and spew so much towards me because she's just like, I have to, like, somebody has to witness this or I can't experience it or something like that. Yeah, and of course that's a huge burden on the loved one. So it's a problem.
What do you think is going to happen with all these kids who now, or these kids these days, but like, who are seeing themselves in videos and photos on their phone all like since they were babies? Instagram, like all the social media where you're literally seeing yourself as an external representation all the time.
I don't know. I mean, I grew up looking at pictures of myself. I'm more concerned about the fact that they're not being mirrored by real people and they're going to be mirrored by AI.
Mm.
And AI is going to
Or
tell them who they are.
by the internet trolling, right? Like,
Right.
it's we the social feedback we get now is even worse because you don't even get real mentalization. You don't really get how everyone was thinking and feeling. You get like this really one-sided bias, like you suck, you're terrible, right? This like
Yeah.
almost like drive-by shooting of emotion of social feedback.
I'm trying to think of why, like, Reddit was so hard for me to let go of because I knew that at a certain point they were no longer reacting to me. They were reacting to an avatar of me that was made up of a lot of false memories that people on Reddit created and like
Hmm.
attached to me. And yet it was still so hard to relinquish like, no, that's me. That's it's me they don't like. It's me that they're
Do
I
you
don't know.
strongly identify with the public version of you? Like,
It's fun. Now I'm like having this meta moment where I'm like, maybe this is what it's a little bit what the BPD experience is like. I don't know what the public version of me is. I
mm,
don't, I didn't receive consistent feedback. So I would put out a part of myself, but I don't know what that consistent whole story that was telling. because when you're an adult and like a full-fledged person with a lot of angles and nuances and, you know, colors and shades and whatever, it's like then you just put out a two-sentence caption with a picture on Instagram and then you do it again and again and again and again. Like, who is that person? I don't know. It's hard to see that person as separate from myself. But of course, other people aren't really knowing me from that. They're only knowing little snapshots.
I mean, I only had a taste of what you experienced, but I posted that post about like the POV reel about a story and a situation that I've heard from many different eh, people and people in the Cool Line community where um, it's women who are noticing that their husbands are getting more depressed and drinking more, getting more withdrawn, and tend to go on YouTube channels that are more right wing, right? Like the manosphere,
Yeah.
at the masculine kind of, and this was from both sides of the politics. And I said, POV, your husband is blah 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 blah, right? And this is not my life. This is not what Alex like. It's not me at all. It literally was
Yeah.
like I made a meme, but like used me as the video and put the words over, and getting like so much internet flack, so many conservative men saying awful things like, well, if my wife looked like you, I'd drink too, and like, you liberal women are the problem. And like there was a level of like, this is so silly, and this is not even me,
Right.
but you can't help but take it personally.
Hmm.
And also, I guess maybe there's a part of the shame that makes it even worse when you can't defend yourself at all. Like
Hmm.
when it's literally like people with anonymous usernames saying all this awful things to you. Um, it doesn't make any difference to like write back to them or defend yourself in any meaningful way because it's just kind of like, it's just like insults raining down on it. It's not a one-on-one interaction. So I wonder, I don't know. I'm
I
just,
mean, look,
I'm
like
just
just
think.
like a person with BPD cries and one day they're hit with little hitting and the next day they're hit with screaming and the third day they're hit with comfort. It's like when you go out on Instagram after The Bachelor and you post something and you get 1,000 people telling you, oh my God, you're the most amazing person ever, but then you get 300 people telling you you're pretentious trash and you lied about getting a PhD and you're so stupid and you use such stupid words and you're not that hot and what else? You're back and whatever. You're just like, well, that's pretty fucking compelling. Like, I mean, 1,000 people seem to like me, but 300 people is a pretty big number, and like, they really hate me. So I don't know. I don't know if this piece of me this like morsel, right, of me that I left out in the internet, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if it's a like thing or a dislike thing. It's both. And so how am I supposed to make sense of that? Okay, I'll try another one. Same thing happens. Fuck. I don't know, right? It's hard to conceptualize of what that is. Then when you're in person, like I've got a whole history of evidence of people loving me and affirming me and experiencing me in a particular way, and then that kind of self-esteem comes back. But online you're putting out a different persona. You're just putting little morsels of yourself out there and people are eating it. And some of them are
Hmm.
spitting it back out and some of them are enjoying it and you're just like, I don't know how to make sense of this. And
Hmm.
so, of course, like it's difficult then to discredit the negative information you get because you
Hmm.
don't know if it's good.
So are you saying this is what happens with people with borderline personality disorder is that they just have such a difficult time understanding who they are and having a grounded sense of themselves that shame can be just overwhelming, kind of like what you're talking about here, where you're
Yeah.
like a buffer against shame is like, oh, I've had a lot of experiences where people love me, but if they just literally have nothing to go on, then shame might be just too much.
Well, yeah, because how if you have nothing to go on, if you truly don't know whether you're a good person or a likable person or whatever, and someone says you suck, you're not going to have a lot to
Hmm.
push back on. You're just going to be like, "Oh God, I suck. Like I'm bad." Like if someone leaves you, right? And you're like, "I'm a leavable I'm somebody that people don't love because I don't have a whole back history of evidence telling me otherwise. I better believe this because like, why wouldn't I, right? Like, that experience of shame is way, way, way different than being able to say, well, this person doesn't like me in this moment.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that people with BPD tend to hypermentalize, right? It's like this overthinking. I mean, tell me more about hypermentalization. I understood it as they tend to have too many thoughts. They tend to read into other people's thoughts and feelings more than they actually exist. Is that
I
what
mean,
like overthinking other people's
essentially, but
thoughts?
you can have just one single thought that's hypermentalized. So
What
I
does that
could
mean? What does that mean?
it means that I make a mentalized inference for which there is not sufficient evidence. So if you frown at me and I say she hates me, that's
Ah,
a single thought, but it's hypermentalized.
oh, I see. I see. But like all compartmentalization has that a little bit, right? Like we don't have all the evidence, but we're making a lot of guesses at what people are thinking and feeling. And if it's accurate, right?
Well, right. So no
I
one
don't
says that hypermentalization is inaccurate. And so this is all this measurement difficulty. It's like, yeah, you're right. Like we are all
I
making
see.
inferences. Some of us are making inferences with more reasonable evidence, I suppose.
Okay.
Um,
So people with BBD because of their shame tend to um just make more interpretations and guesses about what other people are thinking and feeling.
they make more, not necessarily more in terms of quantity. They're not, I
With
mean,
that, they're just making guesses without evidence.
yeah, but they tend to be negative and like more extreme. But I mean,
Hmm.
I suppose you could hypermentalize in the opposite direction. You know, we know that people with BPD split about themselves. Sometimes they think they're the coolest shit that's ever been, right? And so in that they
Hmm.
might hypermentalize and say, this person loves me. But we don't typically talk about that in the literature. It's more like negative hypermentalization.
Mm.
And yes, it could be correct. Like I could be hypermentalizing and say that you hate me, and lo and behold, you actually do hate me, but there was just no evidence for it. And I don't know if they do this because of shame. When we included shame as a covariate, the group differences disappeared. I would imagine it has a lot to do with shame, but it also, I think, fundamentally is like just a pretty good survival strategy if you grow up in abuse. You want to
Hmm.
make more wrong guesses in a particular way, like more,
Yeah.
what, type 1 errors versus type 2. It's amazing. I've
Man,
been 6 years in a program and I can never remember which is which. But if I
you
have a
want to err on the
father,
side of caution.
you want to err on the side of caution. Yeah. If my father is an angry drunk, then I want to make more mistakes that have to do with thinking he's mad when he's not than I do thinking he's happy when he's angry. Because if I think he's happy when he's actually angry, then I might approach and be like, hi, daddy. And then he, hits me. I don't want to make that error. So I want to err on the side of caution and be like, he's mad at me all the time. And then you're going to start
Yeah.
doing it to other people.
Yeah. It's tough to have a loved one who tends to hypermentalize or just, from extreme shame. Like,
Yeah.
it sometimes feels like you are speaking on behalf of a character that person has made up for you. Like
Mm-hmm.
that person is seeing things in you or making guesses about you that you're like, this is not, I don't know where this is coming from. And then you run the risk of gaslighting them by saying, no, that's not true. For example, like one of my big fights with my mom is that I I said some things that she interpreted as like really negative. I said, maybe it's the effect you have on people. And she interpreted that as like I was saying something super negative and I wasn't. And then she interpreted the next part of the conversation as you're not allowed to see Jackson ever again, my son. Um, Even though I had invited her over to see him that day a couple times. And I remember it was such a weird experience to stand next to her and she was like, "Well, you told me you never I can never see my grandson again." And I was like, "Let me show you the text messages where I invite you over." And she just kind of shook her head and was like, "Oh, well, never mind." And so I feel like I was in an argument when I wasn't even in the argument, right? Like she was fighting against someone uh, that wasn't me. like accusing me
Yeah,
of thinking or feeling or intending things that I didn't. And like in that scenario, like how do you defend yourself? All I could say is I didn't say those things. That was incorrect what you felt and thought. But yet that's also kind of invalidating to her experience, which she just felt so rejected and ashamed that it just like covered everything that she was seeing. So it kind of
I
leaves you in
there
a
was
bind as a loved one.
well, it's just so funny because I was thinking like I feel pressure to do what you're doing on social media and start making these videos and everything, but I feel very nervous about that for a number of reasons. But one of them has to do with a little card that I saw at the VA that was called Signs of Gaslighting. And it was quotes like, that never happened, or that's not true, or, like all of these things. And I was like, yeah, okay, these are signs of gaslighting. They're also signs of somebody who's defending themselves against something that didn't fucking happen, right? Like, yeah, if somebody is saying that's what you said and that's not what you said, because that's not what you intended and whatever, like, you can't call that gaslighting, but they're going to feel gaslit. And so now we have a problem. And it's one of the reasons why gaslighting is being flung around all the time.
Yeah.
And the other thing
Yeah.
is
I
that
mean,
sorry, you talk.
no, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing is that hypermentalization can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I tell you over and over again that you don't like me and you don't care about me, you're going to get fed up and stop liking me. And now I'm
Mhm.
correctly mentalizing.
Right. These core beliefs and schemas, we have such a drive to confirm them, right? If I feel
Hmm.
like no one loves me, I'm going to act in ways that kind of push other people to reject me and not love me, just because confirming these beliefs about ourselves sometimes feel a lot more organizing than just being like, whoa, everything I know about myself, it might not be real.
Right, right. It's a rat's nest, and it's super sad.
It is. I think that this is where the DBT skills of learning that feelings aren't facts really come in nicely because gosh, like I wish so many people learned this where it's like, yeah, you might feel ashamed. You might feel like my daughter's not letting me see my grandson ever again, but that might be the shame talking. And that might be the shame in some people feelings have really shaped the way they think, right? Like some people go, "Oh, I feel ashamed, but I know this is just the way I feel right now. I don't think everyone hates me." But some people feel the shame and go, "Oh, everyone hates me and that's true and there's no other possibility of truth," right? So,
Yeah,
and DBT is like learning that like feelings aren't always facts. Like feelings can really shape your thoughts and the way you see things, but like that's not always true.
yeah, I
I
think
just wish
that's
some people learn.
well, I think that's crucial. I think another important piece here is like another covariate that I had in my study, which is it's kind of like it's another factor that kind of comes in and might explain some of the differences you find as a covariate. Um, was just a shameful schema. Like, so how much do our core beliefs explain this? And it was significant with hypermentalization, but I think what's probably happening more is that if you have this schema, you're more likely to feel state shame, and then that state shame is what's going to screw up the mentalization. Um,
Mhm.
and so, but being able to name, like, okay, I've got this core schema that says that I think I'm worthless. Does this help me anymore in life? Talk with your therapist. Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, not really. It's not really helping me. Then, when you're in a situation, being able to name that, okay, I can tell I'm making an assumption that this person doesn't like me. And I know about myself that I have this core belief that I'm unlovable and defective and worthless. So, might this be influencing things? And actually, that same friend that I talked about, she caught herself a couple times and she was like, hey, I just did this thing where I read what you said in a particular way, but I'm trying to ask now instead of making assumptions. Did you mean that you don't like me? I was like, no, that's not what I meant by that. I'm so glad you asked, right? Like you caught the schema. So for me, it's like when I see patients, I have to know I have an incompetent schema. when I am not insisting on them doing homework, is this maybe that schema at work? And do I need to catch it and try to do the opposite, right? Like take a chance on myself. And then understand, like embedded in that is my feelings are not facts. They're telling me information. Some of this information might be useful, some might not be useful, but I gotta slow down and rifle through it and really think about it.
Yeah, these are all these metacognitive or mindfulness abilities to people to step back and see like, oh wow, look at this belief that I have that's affecting the way I see things will then affect the way I feel. Like I have this belief I'm broken, which will make me think that someone hates me or they're going to reject me or think badly of me, which will make me feel really ashamed, which will make me shut down. Right? So it's
Mhm.
just, I've noticed that since did our episode on self-hatred, where I notice how much of my core schemas are negative, I'm like going around the day being like, wow, so many of my thoughts are trying to confirm or like check that. Like, are they better than me? And why am I not doing enough? Why am I not better? Why am I not like, what haven't I done yet? Oh, that's not good enough. Like, just noticing that that's a running like
Yeah, it's so
inner
much fun.
dialogue all the time. It's helpful. It's like it's kind of it's disorienting to watch my core shame schemas spinning round and round all day. But once I see it, it's like kind of like seeing, the Matrix, where you're like, oh, this was all a bunch of ones and zeros. Like now can I
Yeah.
fly? Like what can I? What now? So
Well, that's exciting. Yeah.
yeah, exciting is the word for it. Yeah.
There is a therapy called mentalization based therapy. I don't know how frequently it's done, but I think the general idea is that your therapist is going to help you get a sense of your own and others' mentalizing based on how they respond to like the way. I mean, you've been to a training, so actually, I'll hand it over to you to describe.
I think we should do a whole episode on that,
Oh, okay. So
on
stay
a
tuned
mentalization based training.
next week. But I think the gist is like the therapist tries to give you what you missed when you were a kid: consistency of responding, organizing. Did I say responding? Consistency in responses, organizing, helping you make sense of what you feel and what other people might be feeling. But we can do a separate episode. Anything
Yeah, it's
else?
super interesting to try to figure out how to
Mhm.
develop mentalization abilities in people who struggle with it.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
But I think it's wine o'clock now. I think it's time for you to come over
I'm going on
and
vacation.
watch. Yeah, we should watch Love
Problematic.
Island. There's the
Okay.
UK and the US version, and a shout out to any little helpers who want us to do episodes on, analyzing these because we would love to.
I
So
know. We always think about we were gonna do the other one, the trashy one, the one where they jeopardize their relationships and then cheat on each other.
it's all of them.
Yeah, Temptation
Yeah, it's like
Island.
Temptation Island, some
It's
temptation,
Temptation.
something, something.
Yeah, we were gonna do that, and then we were like, we're a serious podcast. Just kidding. That was not what happened. We procrastinated, and then the moment passed.
We're so not serious that we didn't do the unserious episode and decided to talk about your dissertation instead. So, if you want to hear us talk about Love
Yeah.
Island, either US or UK, please send in your questions. Send us, on the show notes, you can see send us a text. You click on that and just write us a message. You know, I don't know, just say hi.
Oh my
Ask
God,
about
and for
Love Island.
YouTubers, I'm gonna add doctor. I want to add my title, clinical. I
Yeah,
don't want to do this on air, but
yeah, we're
ooh,
gonna add in Dr. Jacqueline Trumbull everywhere. So
oh my
you are
God.
Dr. Jacqueline Trumbull. And if you want to link, if you want to link your dissertation to this,
I'm
so
gonna
people
put it
can
on
read it,
ProQuest. Once it's on ProQuest, I will
yeah,
link it and people can read it.
and then I'll link it on the show notes. So you should be
Yeah,
really proud. It's a really cool study. It's a really cool topic.
thank you.
Shame ruins everything. Don't feel shame. Don't do it. You know,
It doesn't
don't
help.
do it. When you feel shame, just shove it down. Feel other things.
Just do
You're
whatever you
probably wrong.
want. Hurt people and like it. But
Good
don't
tips.
hurt us. Instead, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so that we won't feel shame. And I will give you a clue now about our mental status after you do that, it will be happy. We'll be
We will
happy
like it.
that we will like it and we'll like you if you do that. Okay.
We like you guys anyway.
Alrighty. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
By accessing this podcast, I acknowledge that the hosts of this podcast make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast and any and all content or services available on or through this podcast are provided for general, non-commercial informational purposes only and do not constitute the practice of medical or any other professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and should not be considered or used as a substitute for the independent professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment of a duly licensed and qualified healthcare provider. In case of a medical emergency, you should immediately call 911. The hosts do not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement.